In this lesson, we're going to learn how to solve for sides of a right-angled triangle by using primary trig ratios. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to choose the angle that we're using. It cannot be the 90-degree angle, the right angle that we have. Then we're going to label the hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent sides based on the reference angle. And then we're going to figure out which primary trig ratio is going to use the sides that we have. And then once we write our primary trig ratio with all the pieces of information we have, we will then solve for the missing side. So in this first question, angle P, which is 23 degrees, is what we know. And we're being asked to find side length K. Side length K is across from angle K, so we want to find this side length, and we know this side length here. So the 48 centimeters is across from the right angle, which means it is the hypotenuse, and based on the reference angle, K is not across from but beside, so that is the adjacent. So now we have to figure out which primary trig ratio uses adjacent and hypotenuse. If you remember, we can use SOHCAHTOA to help us remember what each of the three primary trig ratios, which sides they use. So the A and the H are over here, and that is C, the cosine. So the cosine of an angle, and the angle we're using is P. So the cosine of angle P is equal to the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. Now we'll fill in the pieces of information we know. We know that P is 23 degrees, so the cosine of 23 degrees is equal to K, so that's what we want to solve for, divided by 48. So now we want to isolate for K. That means that I want to move the 48 over to the opposite side of the equation. So right now I'm dividing by 48. The opposite of dividing by 48 is to multiply by 48. So I'm going to have 48 times the cosine of 23 degrees, and that will equal side length K. So this is where you can plug into your calculator. You just need to know how your calculator works, whether you input the 23 degrees and then press cos, or whether you press cos and then the 23 degrees. Alternatively, you can use trig tables and look up what is the ratio or the 4-digit decimal for the cosine of 23 degrees. Take that number and multiply it by 48. And when we do that, the result is 44.2. So side length K is equal to 44.2 centimeters. Okay, we'll take a look at another question over here. So once again, we want to find side length K. That is opposite from angle K, so that's over here. Now the pieces of information that I have, I know angle K, and I know the adjacent side to that. So K is opposite from angle K, and across from the right angle is where the hypotenuse is going to be. So we don't have that piece of information. So our third side here that we do know is the adjacent. So the one that uses the O and the A, opposite and adjacent, is T, our tangent ratio. So the tan of our angle, and the angle we're using, our reference angle, was K. So tan of K equals opposite over adjacent. So now we'll sub in the values we know. K is 17 degrees, so the tan of 17 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is K, divided by 3.9. So we're going to do the same thing here. We need to move this 3.9 over to isolate for K. So we're going to have 3.9 times the tan of 17 degrees. And when we calculate that, 1.2, and our units are in kilometers, is what side length k is equal to. So for both of these questions, our unknown that we were solving for was in the numerator, and all we had to do was take our denominator and multiply it over to the other side to isolate for k. We'll take a look now at a couple of questions where our unknown is actually going to be in the denominator. So we'll take a look at how we solve for those. So this time we're looking for I, which is over here on this triangle and over here on this triangle. So my reference angle, the angle that I know and therefore can use, is the 58 degrees. I is across from the right angle. So this is my hypotenuse, and the 11.7 is across from or opposite from the reference angle. So that is O. So once again, if we write down SOHCAHTOA, the trig ratio, which uses both O and H, is sine. So sine of angle P is equal to the opposite over hypotenuse. Angle P is 58 degrees. The opposite is 11.7, and the hypotenuse is I, and that is what I'm solving for. Now, when we have our unknown in the denominator, that's a problem. We cannot have our unknown in the denominator. We need to get it into a numerator. So in this case, I'm actually going to multiply my variable over to the other side. So I'm going to have I times the sine of 58. And then I just have 11.7 left on this side. Now, I need to isolate for I. I need it on its own. So now I need to move the sine of 58 over. Now over here, I'm multiplying by it. So to move it over to isolate I, I'm going to need to divide by the sine of 58. So I have 11.7 divided by the sine of 58 degrees. And if we calculate that, that is equal to 13.8 meters. So side length I is equal to 13.8 meters. So when we have our unknown, our variable in the denominator, we're first going to multiply that over to the other side, and then we're going to take our trig ratio, so our sine, cos, or tan of the angle, and we're going to divide that. So in the end, what we see is that these two are going to swap places because I multiply this up to here and divide this over to here. So let's try one more example then. This time my reference angle is B over here. The 22 millimeters is opposite from that angle, so that's the O. And the hypotenuse is opposite from the right angle. I don't know that. So the other side that I have here, I, that I want to find, is the adjacent. And if we look here, opposite and adjacent is our tangent trig ratio. So the tan of angle B is equal to opposite divided by adjacent. Angle B is equal to 31 degrees. The opposite is 22, and the adjacent, we don't know, that's the I that we want to solve for. So once again, we're going to multiply the I up through to the other side. So I times the tan of 31 degrees is equal to 22. And now I need to divide by tan 31 so that I can isolate I. So I have 22 divided by tan 31. And if you plug that into your calculator, 36.6 millimeters is what side length I is equal to.